Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the session on Preparing California for the Future of Work, moderated by President of WorkingNation, Jane Oates.
Good morning. In true Milken style, this presentation is going to be a little bit different. I am so delighted to welcome you and tell you this is going to be both inspirational, informative, and fun. To begin, we're going to have our first three speakers. Each of them will speak for about 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll bring up the rest of the panel for them to continue and broaden the discussion. So let me first introduce you to Phil Matthews, who is the director, the poobah of talent acquisition for aerospace. I've had a little bit of time to interact with them, and you're in for a treat. Thank you very much.
Jane. Good morning. So how many people have heard of the Aerospace Corporation? Not an aerospace corporation, but the Aerospace Corporation. Okay, great, a few of us. So the Aerospace Corporation, we are a California nonprofit, an FFRDC. So my second question, and I promise you I want to ask a lot of questions. How many of you know what an FFRDC is? Sabrina, thank you, I'm glad you know that. So we are a federally funded research and development center, and we are a California-based nonprofit. And the cool thing about us, we are the one FFRDC that touches everything in space. And space is pretty cool. So a little bit more about us, aerospace by the numbers. And this is our FY17, so you see about almost $1 billion in revenue. And in 2018, we will surpass $1 billion in revenue. We are going to go surpass 4,000 employees this year. And a pretty cool stat, 73% of our workforce is technical. And you see the stat here, which is very timely for the topic today. Over 750 of our employees have PhDs. So an educated workforce and a very strong workforce. This year, we are seeing another year of record hiring. In 2017, we set a record year of hiring, and this year we're surpassing that. We're going to hire over 500 total hires this year, 400 of those being technical, what we call our members of our technical staff, our engineers, scientists, things of that nature. And we brought on 299 interns. We couldn't get to 300. I promise you we tried, but next year we're going to keep going. And this is a pretty cool stat to our commitment to diversity. 42% of our new hires are diverse. Thank you. These are the types of skills that we need to continue to take the future of space to the next level. We're hiring aerospace engineers, chemists, mathematicians, mechanical engineers, software engineering, which we cannot get enough of. I'll stress that again, which we cannot get enough of. I believe I saw a stat that there's going to be over 750,000 or something software engineering jobs in the next few years, and only 300,000 graduates to actually fill those needs. Robotics, cybersecurity, which I touched on, and of course, electrical engineers. Our challenges. So these are some of the challenges facing us in California specific. I mentioned that we are a California-based corporation, but we operate across the nation. And some of the challenges that we're seeing in California are the lack of available engineers and scientists who are cleared or clearable to meet our needs. So that's one of the things I'm going to stress is that the majority of our technical workforce and our workforce in general requires a security clearance. And that is something that we struggle, and every California corporation and every aerospace and defense corporation struggles with as well. A lot of times we're just trading badges back and forth as opposed to bringing new people into the workforce. So that's definitely a challenge. Competition with technology firms and other industries, which offer higher salaries. When I look at our exit surveys, we're not seeing people, the majority of them leaving for other aerospace and defense companies, but tech and startups. So we're competing with non-traditional companies in our space. We have an aging workforce. We know that bathtub has been there for a long time, and we're seeing an increase in our retirements. There's a general lack of awareness for aerospace and defense industry. Back to my first question of who has heard of the Aerospace Corporation, only a few hands went up. So we're trying to change that. And then, of course, the cost of living in California is extremely high, which they've touched on that briefly here. So with these challenges, we're being very aggressive with regards to our recruiting efforts. I'm going to show a a very brief video of some of the things that we're trying to do to be out in front of it at our colleges, universities, diversity conferences, events, and how we're really trying to market our corporation and be in the forefront to capture this critical talent that's needed to shape the future of space. Can you please roll the video?
Where can you change the world? From space.
Well, you can hear it.
At the Aerospace Corporation, you'll touch every part of the U.S.
But I promise
space
it's cool.
program. And partner directly with customers to advance nearly 60 years of space systems innovation. At Aerospace, you'll work elbow to elbow with the industry's leading experts and get the freedom and support you need to have the career you want. At Aerospace, you'll safeguard the most critical missions on Earth and above it. You'll fuel emerging technologies that tackle the world's most complex challenges. You'll be in the right place to take the right path and work with the right purpose.
Well, you can go online and check it out. I promise. The visuals are pretty cool. But so thank you very much. I'm going to hand it over to our next speaker.
I thought that black screen is like taking us through a black hole. I thought that was good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jay Banfield, and I am here with an organization called Year Up. And my job is to frame the challenge for the panel discussion and reflect on what we're hearing from industry. Year Up, quite simply, is a social enterprise that sources talent among or from underserved communities from more than 300 companies. And we've been doing this work for 18 years. As I think about the future of work, there is no question that there is a skills gap that exists within our country. And there's absolutely no question that we need to be producing more graduates with four-year degrees. That is without question. But what we see increasingly in our work is a recognition of what we call a middle skills gap. That we are in the midst of a decade that will end in 2024, where nearly half of jobs in the US economy will be middle-skilled jobs. And we're facing a deficit of 12 million workers with those middle-skilled jobs. Just by way of definition, when we talk about middle skills, we're talking about those roles that require more than a high school diploma, but less than a four-year degree. And I know that we'll be hearing from the Chancellor in the importance of a post-secondary credential. We hear this from all of our partners. So it's not just isolated. We're hearing it from technology companies. We're hearing it from financial services. We're hearing it from healthcare companies. It is across the board, across sectors, is this gap that we're seeing with middle skills. And when we talk about middle skilled jobs, the question is, well, what are those roles? What are we talking about? And literally, there are thousands of roles out there that require more than a high school diploma, specialized training, but less than a four-year degree. It can be something like a big data server engineer, a cybersecurity engineer, or user experience. I thought it would be interesting to highlight one example. We work with Symantec that does a lot of work, obviously, in cybersecurity. And they were interested in understanding how many unfilled cybersecurity roles there were in the country. What I find interesting about this data point, obviously, those numbers are much larger in 2018 numbers. But what I find most interesting about this data is that by their own estimation, 60,000 of those roles could be filled by someone with very specific training, but less than a four-year degree. And if you think about cybersecurity, I think most of us would assume those are high-skilled roles that only can be filled with someone with a CS major. That, in fact, is not the case. And in fact, that is something that we see across the board with our employer partners. As we think about the future of work, we also are thinking about the middle skills gap and the motivation for companies to lean into the issue. And what we've seen is an inflationary pressure that occurs. When we require four-year degrees for jobs that don't require them, that we see inflationary pressure within our labor market and creating distortions within the labor market. This is a report that was produced by Accenture with the Harvard Business School, looking at 6 million jobs that are facing that inflationary pressure within the labor market. And by their own counts, 2/3 responded saying that by requiring a 4-year degree for all of their roles and not being precise about which ones needed it, that they were overlooking qualified candidates in the labor market. That's something that we need to lean into as a country. When I think about the future of work as well, a dimension of the skills gap that is incredibly important and I think is often overlooked is the gap that exists around soft skills. Jeff Weiner is the CEO of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is one of our partners. Jeff serves on our national advisory board. He has a group on staff, the Economic Graph team, that is mapping talent and opportunities across the globe. They released a report recently in April that said the number one, the largest skill gap across markets is in soft skills, communications, teamwork, collaboration. And we know that. We know that those skills are incredibly important, and yet we struggle as a country to develop and to deliver those skills at scale. As I think about the panel and the discussion around the future of work, the good news for us, I believe, is that this talent is all around us. What we need to do is access that talent, and we need to provide relevant training for that talent. We've been part of an ad campaign that I wanted to show you really quickly to talk about the talent that does exist within our country.
I worked 12-hour shifts at the recycling company with my dad, who's 72. That taught me a work ethic that I carry with me every day.
When you're running your own business and taking care of your disabled brother, you tend to learn about responsibility pretty quickly.
I was living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
Growing up where I did, a lot of things could have gotten in the way of my goals, but I learned to push through, and that's what I bring to work every day.
My parents weren't fluent in English, so in school, I had to be independent and take initiative, and that's how I handle every project I get.
So as I think about the panel discussion and about the future of work, there are truths, I believe, that are out there. One is that companies are struggling to find talent. It's across the board, it's at high volume, it's across a wide array of jobs. And we know that there are talented Americans who are underemployed and unemployed, who we need to access and engage in our economy for us to grow the way that the state deserves us to grow. And I would argue that the foundational pillars in order to bridge that gap between the demand that companies experience and the talent that exists within our communities are having hard skills that are mapped to jobs, having true labor market attachment. We have to develop and deliver soft skills at scale within high schools, community colleges, and 4-year universities. And we need to create those experiences where people can practice on the job, those work-based learning experiences to prepare people for work. So thank you very much. I look forward to the conversation.
Good morning. My name is Ardeen Williams. I lead a team at Amazon, the HR VP of Operations, and that's basically from the time you put something into your shopping basket until it appears on your doorstep. And if you're anything like me, that seems to happen on a pretty regular basis at our house. I want to do a simple visual data sample here. How many of you have bartered for goods or services? Just a quick show of hands. How about shopped in a brick and mortar store? Shopped online with a PC or a laptop? Shopped with your mobile phone? How many have asked Alexa to buy something? Okay. Trade is as old as humans themselves, and we've just done a quick survey about how far that has come. 10 years ago, the jobs that it takes to deliver some of these experiences didn't exist. 5 years ago, I certainly couldn't have imagined that I'd walk into my house and interact with a series of applications on the web via a voice assistant named Alexa. But it's easier for us to understand what's lost than what we can gain. Automation impacts employment. In many cases, job content changes when tasks are automated. For example, in our fulfillment centers, we've introduced robots. But we still have the same level of staffing in those fulfillment centers. The difference is, rather than associates walking out to pick things that you've ordered off the shelf, robots bring them to the associates, and the fulfillment centers are far more efficient. It's also created additional jobs. We need mechatronics, repair technicians to work side by side with those associates, and our associates interact on a regular basis with technology and machinery. But let's be clear that when tasks are eliminated, it's a little bit easier to upskill. When entire jobs are eliminated, it becomes more complex. The classic example is the Industrial Revolution, when 98% of the labor required to weave a yard of cloth was eliminated. The vast majority of those folks didn't find other jobs. In fact, it took more than 60 years for wages to recover because those people without skills that were transferable into new roles were pushed into agriculture. Today's changes are happening more and more quickly. In 1900, 40% of the labor force worked in agriculture. Today, about 11% works in agriculture, and that feeds a much larger population at home and abroad. In 1950, 24% of jobs were in manufacturing, and today it's about 9%. As the changes happen more quickly, people have less time to adapt, which means we need to think about skills that are emerging before they're needed. And so we're thinking about how we help people transition to new well-paying jobs by developing the skills that they need to use new technologies to fill roles as they emerge. And we think about this in three ways. The first is we have a legacy at Amazon of customer obsession and innovation, and Alexa is a great example of that. The jobs that brought Alexa to life didn't exist 10 years ago, and there weren't formal education or degrees to provide that training. The second is focused on educating future generations. We talked last night about K-12 and that STEM commitment. We've made a $50 million investment to advance STEM education in computer science at all levels, from kindergarten through the 12th grade, because it really is about addressing that skills gap and the pipeline. And we're not just focused on future generations, rather we're looking to help employees gain skills and be competitive for roles both inside and outside Amazon. Programs like a DOL certified cloud apprenticeship program are a consortium with the LA Unified School District, Santa Monica College, and dual enrollment with Roosevelt High School that provides dual enrollment credential in cloud support associates, for cloud support associates. And our Career Choice program, which is a first dollar program that trains associates in our fulfillment centers for roles both inside and outside Amazon that are available in the area but pay more than the role that they're currently in. Let's take a look at this quick video that talks a little bit more about career choice.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My mom, she had 2 heart attacks within less than 6 months apart. Life is interesting. I never expected for my life to go this way. Use the heel of your hand to only focus on that 1, 2, 3. Once I got out of high school, I couldn't afford college. It was extremely frustrating. That's why I worked a lot. I loved every bit of working for Amazon. I did everything I can to stand out. I was like, wow, like for real? Like I can go to school and they'll pay for me to go to school. I took advantage of it. I couldn't help but to take advantage of it. They have a program called Career Choice. Basically, Amazon will pay up to 95% of your tuition. They actually have classes in the fulfillment center. My career is on a new, different path. I went from my job at Amazon to now I'm one-on-one with students. Yeah, because you want to keep that pressure in that area. I work for American Red Cross. I teach first aid, CPR. My motivation for the healthcare field, it was personal because of my mom.
Oh, I'm so proud of her. Oh my God.
Don't cry, Mom. Don't cry. Don't cry, Mom. Oh. If it wasn't for career choice and me taking my path with Amazon, I probably wouldn't be able to get here.
So the debate about innovation and automation taking away jobs has shaped our conversation and our economic trajectory for millennia. But history shows that innovation does both create and change jobs, and the pace and outcome really hinge on a variety of factors. We've created more than 250,000 full-time jobs with full benefits in the United States. In California alone, Amazon has created an average of 130 new jobs per week since 2013. But the most important factor that will influence the outcome of robotics and the AI debate is what we choose to do together. How we lean in today and take collaborative steps to tackle the skills gaps that we see today and the ones that we can't imagine yet. The work is complex. There is no easy fix. There's no simple path forward. It takes a village to partner and pilot new ideas, to draft and implement public policy, and organizations that can quickly bridge the gaps and accelerate progress while formal roles and responsibilities catch up. I'm excited to be here today to learn more about the good work that's already underway in California and to learn more about what we can do together so that we can lean in and address the challenge ahead of us.
Well, first I want to thank our Dean and Jay and Phil for starting this discussion. And second, I'd like to introduce the new panelists who you haven't met yet, although their biographies live in your materials. Rob Banta is the Assistant Majority Leader and represents the 18th District here in California. Ellen June is the President of USC Stanislaus. And last but certainly not least, my friend Eloy Ortiz Oakley, who's the Chancellor of the California Community College System. And we will begin a discussion. I hope it's building off what you've said, and everyone should join in. But first, I'd like to give a chance to say, we heard some words out there. We heard accelerated pace. We heard innovation and real-life experience. And we heard some things about jobs being hard to fill. So I'd like to say that California has always been at the lead of innovation, especially in the area of public-private partnerships. So I'd like to think about how can we talk, my panelists on my left-hand side here, how can we talk about those public-private partnerships, and I would include government in that, about solving some of these problems, the speed of change, giving people real relevant experience, and most importantly, filling employers' needs so they don't leave California. Anybody want to start?
Well, I'll kick us off. I mean, for us in the California Community Colleges, we are now 115 colleges across California. We're in just about every community you can imagine. And without a partnership with our employers, with our nonprofits in our communities, and certainly without city, counties, state government, we can't do what we need to do because none of the issues that impact our students coming through our system are just in a silo. We serve some of the neediest students in California, some of the most low-income communities in California, all of the communities of color in California. So all the issues that are impacting them in the economy are issues that impact the entire city, the entire county, the entire state. And we have employers who are looking for qualified, good, skilled workers. And they have skin in the game as well. California was built on this notion that employers and educators and governments are going to work together to ensure we have a skilled workforce. And we need to ensure that that happens. So for us, employers like those that are represented in this room are key for us to continue to provide the skilled workforce necessary and for them to invest not only resources, but time, attention, and ensure that representatives of those employers are working with us to build the curriculum that we need to keep the skilled workforce in place.
Thank you. And I want to thank Jane for introducing me. I'm actually here representing the CSU. So I am a president at California State University Stanislaus. So I'm channeling Tim White. Unfortunately, he was not able to be here today. But I wanted to say a couple of things related to your question. The first one is that the CSU represents probably the largest system of its kind in the nation. We have 23 campuses, over 480,000 students, and we sincerely represent the backbone of the workforce in the state of California. Over 3.4 million alumni who are working in the state of California currently. And so I wanted to give you a short, it's like a 65-second video, so you can get a sense of just how much the CSU contributes to the workforce currently in the state. So can we roll that video? Hopefully we won't have technical difficulties and you'll be able to see it.
A key might seem like a simple thing, but the right key, applied in the right way, can open doors, unleash power, generate income, even change the world. For millions of Californians, the California State University is their key. Students come from every corner of the Golden State to fill our 23 campuses. Already more than 3.4 million CSU alumni are making a difference in their careers and in their communities. 1 of every 10 workers in California is a CSU graduate. 1 of every 2 teachers in California is a CSU alumni. Half of all bachelor's degrees in engineering are awarded by the CSU. The CSU awards 54% of all health or medical related bachelor's degrees in California. In fact, each year, the CSU graduates nearly 100,000 new alumni, more than the individual populations of 23 counties in California. Like the 3 million CSU alumni who preceded them, these new graduates are the key to California's ongoing prosperity and success.
So I think you can see that the state of California is in good hands because the CSU is producing over 100,000 students who graduate every year into the workforce. And we have over 30,000 incredibly talented and dedicated faculty who are creating new degree programs that are responsive to business and industry. So as an example, when Jay was talking about the interest in cybersecurity, in the last year, 2 years, 4 CSUs have now created a master's degree in cybersecurity. Those include Dominguez Hills, San Bernardino, San Marcos, and San Jose. And there's data analytics master's degree also coming out of East Bay. So more faculty are also looking into creating new degrees. On my own campus, we are creating a brand new degree in food safety, which didn't exist prior. So we are looking at the next generation of degree programs that haven't yet been maybe even identified yet, because the new developments and discoveries are really at the cross juncture between different disciplines, and that's a very critical need to fulfill. So the CSU is being very responsive that way. And I would say also that every single 23 campuses is engaged in some level of private public partnerships. And so there's much innovation that's happening across the system that is locally and regionally derived. So in the Central Valley, lack of healthcare access is a significant one. So an example of that is we've partnered with Legacy Health Foundation to fund a master's degree in nurse practitioner program. So we don't have a medical school anywhere in the Central Valley yet. There are some that are starting to talk about that at the private level, but certainly at least at the public, we can increase healthcare access through nurse practitioners. So each campus is looking regionally at how they can best meet the needs of their regional business industry and communities.
Great. And now you have to tell us a little bit about government's role in
Yeah.
this, besides funding them.
Absolutely. Well, again, Rob Bonta, serve in the state legislature. My district is Oakland, Alameda, San Leandro, and Assistant Majority Leader, Chair of the Asian Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus. And when it comes to public-private partnerships, I think what the legislature has sought to do is try to play our role in preparing the workforce for today and also the workforce for tomorrow, and looking specifically at the gaps in the current job market and targeting our resources, our support, our programming to what is needed for the future. So when you look at things like what was alluded to earlier, the fact that by 2030 there'll be a deficit of 1 million employees with 4-year degrees. We've invested, this year an additional $1.3 billion in higher education to help get there. We're working towards tuition-free higher education. We started by making the first year of community college free. We also know that there's a need for more STEM jobs, so we've invested more in STEM. We've invested in career pathways and linked learning, which rests on the foundational belief that kids will work harder and dream bigger when their work that they do in school is relevant to them, when it's connected to a career, when they have an internship, when they have employers who come in and meet with them and share how their work in the classroom connects to a future job. and when they can have internships and actually work in that job. So there's opportunities for public-private partnerships in each of those spaces. There's opportunities for private employers to work in linked learning career pathway programs. There's also, there's often been in the private sector a belief that I've heard in the 6 years I've been in the legislature that the best thing the government can do is step aside, leave us alone, don't get in the way, and certainly there can be unintended consequences from unwelcome interference or overregulation, but I think we should seek common ground when there's a need for partnerships. If the private sector is seeing a need for more STEM training, more soft skills training, whatever it may be, we can work on legislative package, legislative programming. We can do work together to help achieve our common goals. I'll end by sharing that there's an opportunity at local levels as well for public-private partnerships, right? In my own district, in places like Oakland, we're working on things like the Oakland Children's Initiative and Oakland Promise. Early childhood education is a passion of mine, something that I believe there's a strong business case for, making sure that our young people are ready for kindergarten by the time they hit 5 years old. We have so many students who aren't able to achieve their full potential and realize their dreams because they don't get the early childhood education that they need, when we know that 80% of brain development is completed by age 4, 90% by age 5. We need to really promote more early childhood education opportunities if we want that workforce of tomorrow. And there's been great business support and partnerships from places like the Bay Area Council who have made the business case for early childhood education. So we need to help on the bookends, early childhood as well as higher education, to prepare the workforce for tomorrow.
Thank you so much. So we've heard that everyone has kind of bought into this concept of public-private partnerships. So I'd like to dig in for a second and ask each of you, in no particular order, and you can all jump in, but tell me your biggest success in terms of public-private partnership, and tell me your remaining biggest challenge, and maybe we can work together to get some of those fixed in California. Start?
I'm happy to jump in. To your question about the importance of partnerships, I think it's always been true that partnerships are important. As we think about the future work and the acceleration and the changing nature of work, it is an imperative. And I would argue that we need to move beyond partnership to true integration, because we can't have systems that are running in parallel, and as it moves more quickly, it's easy to get misaligned. And so how is it that we create true integration with public and private sector to move forward together? I'd say from a Europe point of view that we've had a lot of success building a strong network of employer partners in the C-suite. And I think that the most encouraging thing that I could point to is that to a person, every company sees the problem and wants to lean in to solve the problem. And I think that is an incredibly important thing to note as we try to solve this really complex problem. The frustration that I have is that we've worked with 300 companies, but there are many more companies than that in the country. And how is it that we can replicate that true integration at scale in a region and a state level is something that we think a lot about.
I would agree that scale is huge. I think the partnership is critical. I think government policy has a place because it convenes. I mean, that's why we're here. It's how we move forward together. And if we look, we have there's a consortium with the LA Unified School District and 8 community colleges in Los Angeles, and with our Amazon Web Services business. And they came together to offer courses in cloud computing. And from that spun out with the Santa Monica Community College and Roosevelt High School, a dual enrollment program, dual certificate for cloud support associates in years, so basically high school and graduate dual enrollment. Now, it takes industry to lean in, help build the curriculum. You need the partnership with the community college to move quickly. And it doesn't have to be a degree. It can be a credential, right? That stackable credential so that you actually move people forward. They have an entree to a career. They make a living wage with benefits. And then they can take that next step towards what's the right piece. And it really is, how do you scale that? We can point to lots of point opportunities where we say, hey, this worked in LA, or it worked with Microsoft, or it worked with Amazon. How do we double down on those things that work and do it in an integrated fashion across the state? Because that's where the power comes from, right? That's how we accelerate the movement. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is it really takes a village, and there's far too many cooks in the kitchen to make it efficient.
If I can just add on to that, I think while the topic here is important partnerships, but the reality is it's time for partnerships to end, and it's time for full integration and scale to begin. because we have talked about partnerships between employers, education, government for years and years and years, and income inequality continues to stretch wide. We continue to see a huge impact on communities of color, on low-income communities. And so partnerships in and of itself is no longer a solution to the challenge that we face. Scale is the issue. Scale is the issue, and that cannot happen unless we have full integration. And I think that's what we need to continue to push forward, is to really focus on a workforce that now demands a post-secondary credential. We need to rid ourselves of this notion that a high school diploma is enough. And so if we begin to look at it that way, then we begin to look at how do we integrate the state, all of its components, to really ensure that we have a workforce that is going to be prepared not just for tomorrow, but for today, because we're not prepared today.
I agree with that, and it's everyone's touching this, but it is to scale. And a lot of the positions, I'll say, in the aerospace industry do require that 4-year degree, but Jay's presentation touched on this. Cybersecurity, for example. I work with a lot of leaders who believe they must have that 4-year degree or beyond in order to do cybersecurity. That's not true. There's a lot of underserved communities that don't even know these opportunities exist. So partnering together, public and private sector, for either curriculum development, education, things of that nature, is going to help us actually achieve that scale and actually serve the communities that don't even know that we're out there.
Phil, I want to bring up something you brought up in your presentation, because I think it's unique to you on this panel, but a big problem nationally and certainly statewide, and that's passing clearance.
Correct.
How do we get the information about what's going to come if you want to work with certain employers down to the students at the CSU system and at the community college system? Because oftentimes I hear anecdotally in the state and elsewhere that somebody's blocked from a job at 40 because of something silly they did at 17 or 18 or 22.
True. So the majority of the roles in the defense industry do require government security clearance, and it's an extremely rigorous process. And there are things that happen, so it goes back to that education. These are the types of roles and opportunities, and the wonderful opportunities that are in front of you. And in order to achieve that, here's kind of some of the markers. And with that is, not doing something silly at 17, 18 that could actually block you from ever obtaining that security clearance and keeping you out of an industry that is thriving and extremely exciting. So it goes back to those partnerships and really institutionalizing this. These are some of the opportunities that are in front of you, getting people excited. We talked about it. It needs to happen before high school and before college. It needs to happen, in the earlier years. Get people excited about, industry, engineering, tech. And what are some of those things need, and that will keep people on the right path. But it does require industry and an investment in industry to go educate.
It's those connected learning experiences that we talked about, right? How do you expose people and say this is possible, right?
Correct.
And oh, by the way, this is a job that I didn't know existed.
Right.
And if I think about Eli's point about moving to true integration, that if there is true integration, you almost have a service level agreement that says we're going to provide talent for these jobs, and you're having that conversation with the aerospace corporation and say, what are your constraints and barriers? Let's name them right now before we find the young person or the returning adult to go fill that role and get them into the right track so they don't hit that barrier and have it be a surprise. There's no reason for it to be a surprise if you're truly integrated.
And industry.
If we think about the communities that we're trying to ensure have access to these jobs, these are communities that have historically been overrepresented in the corrections system, and so they have that issue to contend with once they get out and they get their education. But there's a number of issues about getting information, both in terms of what is going to be necessary to get a good paying job and on down the line. So I just think we really need to focus much more attention on young people, helping them understand what they're going to need, because if we can ban them from social media early on, that would be good. But if you think about it, what would prevent a young person from getting a federal job doesn't prevent the President of the United States from getting a federal job. So,
something that's very important to note too is that industry needs to be okay that it's not going to be an immediate return. You have to make that investment.
And I'll just add also, from the state perspective, as we look at are bigger challenges like income inequality and opportunity for disadvantaged, underrepresented communities. While it is important to try to help young people make the best decisions early on, not all will, and some will make mistakes. And some will make mistakes that they recover from, that they're rehabilitated from, that they pay their debt to society about. And that they shouldn't be judged for the rest of their life on the worst mistake they ever made, even though they've recovered and they've learned from it and they have a strong work ethic and they want a job. There needs to be a removal of those barriers where appropriate. We've taken steps in that regard at the state level with our Ban the Box campaign. We started in state work so that you determine a job applicant's qualifications first before you see if they have the box checked, which is the box to determine whether they have a felony or another type of record. And so you've already made the decision that they can do the job. And then now you are also able to take into consideration the fact of the prior conviction, but it's not just everyone with a conviction, your resume is thrown out from the beginning. I think that's how we can provide more opportunity for folks going forward.
Oh, that's such a good point. I mean, that's an economic imperative. You have jobs open in the state. You have jobs open at aerospace in the state. Why would we weed people out when we need to be entering people in and encouraging people? And that's a place where I think California still remains a national leader.
No, as I say, if we come back to scale, though, it's really, I mean, we're talking about there's that K-12 or K-14 pipeline, and then it's this concept of durable transferable credentials, right? So how do I, for example, the cybersecurity one that you cited, right? How do I create that certificate that's recognized across the state, or a degree or classes that are transferable from one unit to the next, so that as adults, as you move through that young adulthood period, you can in fact make career choices that build upon what you've already done. And that's where that integration is really key, because we, in many cases, force people out to go back and start again.
Yeah, the time for one and done education is over. I mean, people grew up on the notion that if I just get my associate's degree, or if I get a bachelor's degree, I'm done. And the reality is the future of work is going to demand that all of us continue to upskill ourselves. And so if California can build that platform now, and this is a plug for the 115th college, but if we can build that platform now that allows Californians to continue to upskill themselves, I think that really is what we're going to need as a state to keep up with the challenges of the future of work.
I can also mention that the CSU does have self-support programs through our extended education divisions on each campus, and all of those campuses, extended ed, are seeking to do what Eloy is talking about, and our dean, in terms of having more credentials, competency-based credentials, and then additional credentials that can also be achieved in an online environment, so that people can upscale their skills in a variety of different domains at a very affordable cost as well, high quality, high educational access. So that's something that the CSU is actively involved in as well.
Well, I want to talk, we heard three terms that I want to stop for a minute and talk about, because I'm not sure the audience knows exactly what they mean. One was dual enrollment, one was internships, paid internships or accredited internships, and the third was apprenticeship. Could we just pause there for a second and talk about both, you know, the roles that we all play in that, and how do we take those to scale? Those are really terrific ways to get people the skills that they need and let them earn money in many cases while they're learning those skills.
I'll take the dual enrollment piece, since community colleges are the most active. Right. Dual enrollment, or concurrent enrollment as it's called, is the opportunity to allow high school students to take college courses and get college credit. So there are many efforts to integrate both high school and community colleges so that high school students can gain access to career pathways early in their educational experience. And so this is a movement that's growing. A few years back, the legislature allowed for a more scaled approach to concurrent enrollment, and it's something that many of our community colleges are pursuing, so that we can get high school students in the pipeline early, get them on course, realize the true nature of what kind of credential they're going to need. And in this last budget that Governor Brown signed and the legislature passed, we now have the opportunity to implement what's called the P-TECH model, which is to create a 9th through 14 academy. So that academy is focused now on having all those students earn an associate's degree, not just a high school diploma. So this will be, again, that attempt to to stretch out dual or concurrent enrollment well beyond its current confines.
And you have to applaud the legislature for doing that, because kids of wealth could do this of always. They could take credits from Syracuse online if they couldn't do it in state, you know. But literally, the fact that you made this available to all kids is such a great equalizer. Tell me the pressure of getting that passed, or no pressure.
Well, I mean, in California, it's kind of who we are, to provide more opportunities for communities that have been shut out or have had additional obstacles because of things that shouldn't matter, like your income. So, you know, we're progressive and we're open around providing opportunity that's universal, and providing greater inclusion and justice for all of our diverse people. So the dual enrollment bills usually are worked out and have broad support.
That's terrific, because this is a place where the federal government has not been helpful, allowing low-income kids who are Pell eligible to use their Pell before they enroll full-time in a community college. So this is really another thing that California has to be very proud of. I'm going to turn to the people on this side to answer the second part of my question, or the second and third part, about internships and apprenticeships, because I know you all have experience in both of those.
Happy to tackle the apprenticeship piece.
Yeah.
So we have so technical apprenticeships are, people are very familiar with them and typically associate them with skilled trades in the United States. They're a foundational piece of the European education system. They consist, the Department of Labor has a certification program for apprenticeships. They consist of a formal curriculum that's classroom-based, and then a period of supervised on-the-job training under the guidance and supervision of someone who's qualified in that skill. So for us, we have cloud support associates in our web services business. The apprentices come in, do the classroom training, and they are paid employees during that period. They're on a wage scale. About 70% of their final salary is paid during the apprenticeship period, and then they get pay rises as they hit specific competency gates through the apprenticeship program. And at the end of the period for our technical apprenticeships, it's about a year, they transition into a full-time regular employee at that journey person level.
I'm happy to touch on the internships, since I mentioned that during my presentation, that this year we brought on 300 interns. So our internship program in particular can either be a summer internship, which the majority are, or a year-round internship for university students. We bring in for a period of a minimum of 8 weeks, up to 12. They're all paid internships across our corporation. The majority of those are technical. We do have non-technical internships as well. And the goal of that is to really take the classroom learning and expand that into industry, and provide a substantial project that the intern or student is going to do with either an engineer or a leader or a project manager during the course of that internship, and see them take something from beginning to completion, and then they take that back to school. Do this for a couple reasons. One, to further the interest of science and business and things of that nature. Two, it's a great way for the student to earn some money, get out of their parents' house for the summer, and then three, it's a great way for the student to explore the corporation, and for the corporation to explore the relationship with that student. Our goal is to ultimately hire those and convert those into full-time employees. So we start that early. We don't just hire everyone who's going to be graduating. We do have undergraduate internships and graduate internships as well. And we hire anything from freshmen all the way through senior, and then graduate and beyond.
And Jay, your whole concept in Year Up is built on the importance of that internship, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Sure, no, absolutely. And I think of apprenticeships and internships falling under an umbrella of work-based learning.
Yes.
And so there are different rules for an internship versus an apprenticeship. And I think it's critical, the idea, and it was alluded to earlier on the panel, the idea that people are going to consume education for the first 20% of their life and then work for the rest of their life is an antiquated notion. That just won't exist as the future of work continues to evolve. I think it's incredibly important that we have work-based learning experiences integrated into our high school and post-secondary experiences, because I think education is going to be much more modular. You're going to be floating between work, back to school, doing both simultaneously. And it's really important, and it was, Phil was talking about this, I believe that employers are working with the best of intentions. And I think part of the problem that creates the divide is that companies are looking to de-risk their hiring processes, right? And so they're looking for proxies, and I would argue they look for overly blunt proxies. They ignore pools of talent that Eloy has mentioned. They focus too heavily on advanced degrees. And what you do with a work-based learning experience is you help to de-risk that hiring process. So it's great to hear you say that we're going to bring in hundreds of interns with the intent of hiring them. And a lot of what you're doing is you're de-risking that hire. And so what we need to do as a country is create different sets of proxies that de-risk a hiring of someone with a criminal background, because there are social justice issues that we need to unpack as a country. But it's driven from a place of, we need to de-risk this. We as a society need to help companies de-risk that hiring process.
So I want to switch topics just a little bit to something else that came out in your original presentations, and that's employability skills. They can be referred to as soft skills. I don't think they're so soft, but these are the kinds of skills, teamwork and punctuality, communication, that often get people fired in the first 6 months of their employment, or don't get them through the door even though they have the degree or the credential that they need. How do we teach these? How does California begin to assess them? How do we begin to integrate them? Because I love this word integration. How do we begin to integrate them? I hope we're not going to have a course on employability skills. I'd love your thoughts on that.
I can start by saying that in the CSU, we have a division of student affairs, and the student affairs is the division that generally tries to furnish students with additional co-curricular activities, which includes things like soft skills, business etiquette, how to shake someone's hand, how to make eye contact, what does business attire mean, dining etiquette. These are things that maybe parents don't teach students that much anymore, and so students don't have that. And this is particularly true for first-gen students. So my campus, for example, 74%, the highest percent of students in the CSU and UC system who are the first in their family to go to college. So they have no role models. And they have no other people in their communities who have a bachelor's degree or who are working at a job that requires a bachelor's degree. So the kinds of things that we are trying to do are to use innovation that's been used at other campuses. And for one example is Stanford University has the D School, if you've ever heard of it. It's a design school. It's not an official college per se, but they use principles of design to solve various kinds of problems. And one of the innovations that came out of there is a course they call Design Your Life. And you said you didn't want to hear a course about this, but in fact, at Stanford, it's one of the most popular optional courses originally designed for juniors and seniors that helps them connect an odyssey tour of what do they want to do as a future individuals, not just their career goal, but their professional and their personal lives together. And so we have piloted that course on our campus as well. So it helps students connect what their future vision is while they're still a student, the relevance of the courses that they're taking, their major, and connecting to their future career. And in that course, they also get the information about soft skills as well. So it is an innovation, and students are responding very positively to this course. And in fact, the provost and I will be team teaching a section this fall to enlarge the opportunity for more students.
Oh, that's great.
It should be a new thing.
I think you do have to make it explicit. I mean, the target for our target audience for the apprenticeships were military. I started in the United States Army, and that transition from military to civilian is huge. There are cultural norms, there's communication, there's behavior, talk about dress, and it's far easier for us to transition, whether it's in an apprenticeship program or a different kind of a transition program, to make expectations explicit and to help people understand what those norms are and how we behave. And because they're a little uncomfortable, I think we tend to shy away from those conversations, and yet those can be the most powerful in helping someone make that transition, whether it's from a first-gen family in college, a military transition, or someone who's been in the criminal justice system. Right?
Yeah, I agree. I think the workplace training environment is a real prime place for where these skills can be acquired and learned, whether it be apprenticeships or internships. There's a wonderful apprenticeship program, pre-apprenticeship program in my own district of Oakland, where individuals who've had contact with the criminal justice system get trained for careers in the skilled building trades. And these are folks that need to learn skills that for many of us may already be intuitive or learned, but not everyone has. And coming to work sober, being on time, being dressed appropriately, looking folks in the eye. a whole set of skills that are really important that they really focus on. They make it explicit. It's almost like a zero tolerance where you really need to have a strict commitment to learning these skills, and it helps. And when I go to the graduation for these programs, I mean, these are folks that thought they were going to spend much of their lives in jail or in prison, and are now looking at a future where they can support their families and live a middle class, live the middle class dream and have a really good job. And so it's really transformational. But I agree, it has to be explicit and it has to be learned in the right environment.
Well, I like a term that you brought up that the audience may not be familiar with, and that's pre-apprenticeship programs, because for years we found that a lot of people couldn't, especially people of color, many women, couldn't get into registered apprenticeship programs because they didn't know the secret sauce. And these pre-apprenticeship programs really are gate opening for those young people, or not so young people, because I don't want to let anybody think that either apprenticeship programs or internships are just for 18 to 22-year-olds. They're a great way for older workers to get reacclimated to a new career. But I really, again, I want to think that pre-apprenticeship program is critically important so that more people have access to really apply and be qualified for those apprenticeship programs.
And it isn't young people. The sweet spot of apprenticeships is typically that 23 to 30-year-old with 26 right in the middle, and pre-apprenticeship programs are critical because on the technology side, the adult basic education test isn't adequate. We need people who have had exposure to computer technology, who also have a basic algebra capability, and that's a step beyond. So that pre-apprenticeship capability is incredibly important for young adults.
Yeah. Can I put the two employers on the hot seat for a second and say, what would you say are the employability skills that are most lacking when new employees are onboarded? It's a terrible question.
That's a good question. I have several dancing through my head right now.
You remember, you can influence the entire California system right here. And the state government.
I know. One of the things, because I was thinking through this a little bit, but we're very deliberate in our screening process. And I'm going to go back to the soft skills. When I joined the corporation, one of our senior vice presidents to me said, Phil, we are a technical company, make no mistake about it, but we need people who can work back and forth between our customers. So those soft skills are critical. And previously, I think we did a fantastic job of hiring for the technical talent, and we missed some of the soft skills. And so we screen heavily for the soft skills. We recently just gave a class to a group of students with regards to your resume may be identical to the person's next to you. You may have a 4.0, you've done all the volunteer work, you had the same curriculum, it's identical on a piece of paper. Again, to Jay's point, 7 seconds, that recruiter might look at that and pass you on. But it's how you show up on that phone screen, smile through the phone, all these little things. They may sound tiny, but they're huge in the end because they make the biggest difference about that person moving forward or not. So I think just going back to some of that soft skills training, because I could go to a college campus, put up our booth, and see 2,000 people come through, and I'm going to remember the person who did their homework, who had that good handshake, who took that extra step versus just saying, what does your corporation do? So.
Yeah. That's great. Ardeen, you want to?
I think it's the same for us. I think that the STEM is table stakes, right? In the industry that we're in, as society evolves, we all need a STEM background. But it is about those soft skills. There was a piece on CNBC about how to get a job at Amazon, and it's fundamentally about storytelling. Help me understand who you are, what you've done, how you've done it, so that I know that when I bring you in, you'll have this focus on innovating for customers, and you'll work in a team environment. And so that storytelling and those soft skills are hugely important. They don't take the place of some of the technical basic qualifications that are required, but they absolutely are what make the difference for one person joining and someone else not.
That's great. Jay, I'm not letting you off the hook. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Because from the Year Up perspective, you can kind of anonymously tell us you're under the hood in probably 100 different employers across the country, and probably tens and tens of here in California. So give everybody an insight, especially my college friends over here, an insight of what you see as the most important soft skills.
Sure. And what we hear is very similar to what I hear people on my left and my right. So that's not a surprise. And I'm going to tie into your question earlier about how you solve the problem. And I think that you can't solve a problem unless you name it. And what I think is encouraging is that there's a growing recognition, LinkedIn certainly and Jeff are out in front saying that a soft skills gap exists. That's the first component to solving a problem, which I'm encouraged about. What we see in our work at Year Up is that soft skills also is more than just a curriculum. It's one thing to say you need to be on time and write that down on a piece of paper. It's a completely different animal to then create a methodology where someone can develop that mastery of being able to be on time consistently. Yeah. And the thing that I think we should name if we think about true integration with our systems is that many young adults in our case, we work with 18 and 24-year-olds, have systemic barriers to their participation in the workforce. And so many of them have emancipated from foster care, have children of their own. And as we think about soft skill development and developing those masteries, we need to provide the underlying support for a young person to develop those skills. If you can't just say, be on time, well, what if I have a child that I got to get to daycare and I don't have a vehicle? We can't ignore those social problems, and the solution needs to account for those as well.
So I'm going to do a lightning round because we just got notice that we're going to be on time. And the lightning round is really, if you had one simple 1-minute piece of advice to give to colleges, to employers, to government about how to arm yourself and be prepared for the future of work, what would your advice be?
For me, to the public, I'd say continue to upskill and reskill yourself, because that is the future of work. We need to keep moving forward. We need to keep learning new skills, and we need to find ways to demonstrate those skills. To employers, I'd say, think about the messages that you're sending to students in communities that we serve, because while we talk about soft skills and the importance of soft skills, I see kids every day who demonstrate great soft skills in the communities that we serve, but they can't break through that 7-second algorithm that you use to screen out applicants because they didn't go to Berkeley, they didn't have a 4.0, they didn't score crazy on SAT, which is an indicator of how wealthy they are, not how prepared they are. So I think we need to be careful about the messaging, and if we are truly want to see the kinds of skills that students demonstrate on the ground, reflected in employers, make sure that you give them an opportunity to demonstrate.
And piggybacking on what you're saying here, I would also add that in terms of what we look at the future of work in an individual's life, the Department of Labor has done studies to show that the average American after the age of 22, 25, is sustaining anywhere from 7 to 11 jobs before they retire. So that is a nationwide statistic. So that tells us, as Oates was saying, that we are constantly changing, and we need to constantly rethink and upscale our what we offer to students as an institution, as an institution of higher learning, but also to support individuals at every stage in life, even those with a baccalaureate or beyond, to upscale in the future. And again, in terms of thinking about what the business and industry can do, I want to echo what you're saying here, is that business and industry ought to invest in thinking about how they can build bridges with their local groups, whether it be K through 12 community colleges or higher ed, to offer more internships and apprenticeships. That would be very important as well. So those are all key things. And finally, for those who are in the legislative branch, the CSU, as large as we are, still has insufficient funding. Seriously.
Go to the community college.
Yes. And
you
Rob
see anyone?
Rob actually asked me this at breakfast.
They just phoned in.
Yeah.
Because we turn away 30,000 students who are eligible for the CSU for a baccalaureate degree every year, and more students are now leaving California to pursue their bachelor's degrees in Arizona and the Pacific Northwest. So, but working all together with a panel like this, I think we can make some continued great progress in this arena. So,
no pressure.
Yeah. I'll just say I'm in vehement agreement that we need to do more still to fully fund our schools at all levels, K-12, preschool, higher ed, and we've made progress, but we need to do more.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
For the lightning round, I as a elected public official, as a member of government speaking to employers and industry, I'd like to sort of invite an ideologically different perspective than what I've often seen, and want to invite industry and employers to see government as a partner and to seek out ways to work together. I think there's often an instinctive view that government is an unwelcome regulator or an obstacle or gets in the way, but I think we have more in common than is different, and we can work together in more places than we realize, and that when we do, whether it be addressing diversity or building our workforce of tomorrow or strengthening the contents of our educational programming, whatever it might be, internships, apprenticeships, there's more ways to work together, and we're stronger when we work together. So I just want to invite that approach, because me and many of my colleagues share that as well.
Mine's pretty straightforward. There is so much exciting, incredible work going on at the community level in this space. Lean in and get after it. We can't sit back and wait for it to be solved at the state level, and it's probably incredibly complex at the county level. But there are partnerships and I know we want to get past partnership, but if we want to move forward, it's about taking advantage of those opportunities that are working and then looking at the next ring out and saying, how do I expand it? How do I scale it? Because if we sit back and wait at the pace that change is happening, it's not going to happen. And so that's incumbent on all of us sitting in this room. Take a look at what's working, figure out how to expand it, double down, and then we'll work on the scale.
For me, the future is all about upskilling. By definition, you can't upskill if you don't have the foundational skills. So I think there's a moral imperative that we attach as many Americans as we can to the labor market and leverage the skills that they have and properly match them to those opportunities. Because if we don't do that now, the divide will only get exponentially larger.
I agree with what everyone says, and for me, it's really that train and retrain. I come across a lot of people who say, how do I go about doing this? I don't have the resources to do that. So I think we can all work together to, we bring those learning opportunities, whether it's to the workplace, whether it's online, whatever the case may be, but we need to continue to train and retrain.
Well, I hope you'll agree with me that the panel was amazing, and their passion and their commitment evident in everything that each of them said. Please join me in thanking them so much.